In this lesson, we'll learn everything that you need to know to get started reading music. We'll cover the basics like the music staff, bar lines, measures, clefs, and I'll show you a powerful tool to help remember the note names for the treble clef, the bass clef, and the grand staff. This is the music staff, and it can be defined as 5 lines and 4 spaces upon which notes and rests are written. The numbers are counted from bottom to top, lines 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and spaces 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each line of music is called a system, and we can divide it into smaller sections called measures or bars by adding bar lines. For example, this system is segmented by 3 bar lines, creating 4 measures. This is the treble clef, and when it is placed on the music staff, it determines the note names for each line and space. The treble clef is the most common clef, and it's used for instruments that are higher in pitch, like the violin, the flute, clarinet, saxophone, trumpet, and guitar. The notes on the lines, going from bottom to top, are E, G, B, D, F, and it's also called the G clef because it circles around the second line, which is G. The notes on the spaces are F, A, C, and E. Now that might be a lot of new information to learn, so it's very helpful to use a mnemonic device to help you remember. A mnemonic device means memory device, or like a memory tool, and it can be anything that helps you recall and retain information. The 2 most common ways that students are traditionally taught to remember notes on the lines are every good boy deserves fudge, or every good boy does fine. But you can come up with your own mnemonic device. Every good burger deserves fries. Eat great big donuts on Fridays. Elephants get big, don't forget. And every girl breathes dragon fire. Whatever you choose, you should probably just stick with one, and if your music teacher has one, you should use that. Pretty soon you won't need the memory aid to help remember the names, because you'll just memorize them through repetition and practice. I still prefer to teach, if you see a note on a line, remember every good boy does fine, and if you see a note on a space, spell face, F-A-C-E. Now, in addition to using these mnemonic devices, you can also use your hand to help remember the names. The best way to learn something accurately and quickly is by practicing and reinforcing it in multiple ways. For example, visually, orally, verbally, and kinesthetically. Kinesthetic means movement, so when you're learning something new, it's best to see it, hear it, speak it, and physically engage with it. So we're going to use our hands and fingers to represent the letters of each line and space. Hold up your right hand and point to each fingertip from bottom to top. Your fingertips represent the 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the spaces represent the spaces of the staff, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 represents E, G, B, D, F, and the spaces in between, 1, 2, 3, and 4 represent F, A, C, and E. Now let's practice a few examples using the hand staff. So hold up your right hand and point to your thumb. This is line 5, and this is F. Every good boy does fine. This is line 1, E. Line 4, D. Line 2, G. Line 3, B. Let's do some spaces next. Space 4, E, F, A, C, E. Space 1, F. Space 3, C. Space 2, A. Now we'll go back and forth a little bit. I'll point to it and see if you can guess it before I give the answer. So what's this one? Line 2, G. Space 3, C. Line 5, F. Space 4, E. Last one. Line 2, G. Next, let's look at a few examples on the music staff using a whole note. A whole note is a musical symbol that represents 4 beats of sound. And when it's placed on the first line, for example, it means play the note E for 4 beats. There are other notes like the half note, quarter note, and eighth note, but we'll discuss those in more detail in a different lesson. This note is sitting on line 4, which is D. Every good boy does. And see if you can figure out these examples on your own using your hand staff. So this note, line 2 is G, line 5, F, and line 3, B. Now let's do the same for the notes on the spaces. Remember the note names for the space spell face, F-A-C-E. So this is space 1, F, space 3, C, space 2, A, and space 4, E. You also may have noticed that there are a couple notes that appear twice. There's an E on line 1 and on space 4, and there's an F on space 1 and on line 5. Let's do a few more examples for practice and to reinforce our knowledge and memorization of the notes on the treble clef. Space 2A, line 4, D, line 2, G, space 4, E, and line 5, F. Next, we'll talk about the bass clef. The bass clef is commonly used when writing music for lower pitched instruments like the bass, tuba, trombone, and the cello. It's also referred to as the F clef because the 4th line, F, sits in between these 2 dots. The names of the lines are from bottom to top, G, B, D, F, and A, and the names for the spaces are A, C, E, and G. We'll also use some clever mnemonic devices to remember these letters, just as we did for the treble clef. For the bass clef lines, we'll say, good burritos don't fall apart, and for the spaces, we'll say, all cows eat grass. And just like we did with the treble clef, there are a couple repeated letters. There's a G on line 1 and on space 4, and an A on space 1 and line 5. We'll use the left hand to represent the lines and spaces for the bass clef. So let's do a few examples right now, and I do encourage you, try this at home because you'll learn it better. So raise your left hand and do this with me. So the first one is line 5, A, space 4, G, space 2, C, line 4, F, space 1, A, space 3, E, line 1, G, line 3, D, and line 2, B. So that covers notes on the staff, but what about notes that sound above or below the staff? Well, you can just keep adding lines. They're called ledger lines. But as you can see, it gets increasingly difficult to read the notes the more ledger lines you add. So to solve this problem, we use what's called the grand staff. See, problem solved. Okay, that's actually not very clear, but we can make it clearer. What we'll do is we'll take away that middle line. It's called middle C, and we'll make it invisible. And then we'll add a treble clef to the top staff and a bass clef to the bottom. And this is the grand staff. It takes us from low G on line 1 all the way up to a high F on line 5 in the treble clef. The grand staff is most commonly used when writing for the piano, with the left hand playing the lower notes written in the bass clef, and the right hand playing the higher notes written in the treble clef. And now that we know the names of all the notes for both clefs, there are actually just 3 more notes that you need to know and then memorize, and you'll know everything for the grand staff. So this is middle C. It sits on that invisible line between the 2 staves, and we show a ledger line right there. So that's middle C, and above C is D, and below C is B. Think B for below C. You also may have noticed that there is no letter H and beyond in the musical alphabet. It's only A through G, and we just repeat it. So if we started on A in the bass clef and just kept going up, you just repeat the letters again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Saying the alphabet forward is very easy, but you should also practice going in reverse. G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. So going forward is ascending, going up, and saying the letter names in reverse is descending or going down. The last thing we'll do in this video is practice naming the notes on the grand staff by using both hands to represent both clefs. So be sure your right hand is on top, representing the treble clef, and your left hand is on bottom, representing the bass clef. And here's how you can represent the 3 notes that connect the 2 staves, B, C, and D. Place your finger on your thumb for the B that sits above A, above the bass clef. And place your finger just below your pinky for the D that sits below the treble clef E. And then for middle C, just move your finger down to represent that middle C right in between both staves. Okay, so let's do a few examples now. Starting with the treble clef, space 3, C. Line 2, G. Line 4, D. Line 1, E. Jump down to the bass clef now. Line 3, D. Space 4, G. Back up to treble clef. Line 1, E. Line 5, F. Bass clef, space 2, C. Treble clef, line 3, B. Bass clef, line 5, A. Last one, D below the E. So I hope that helps you better understand how to get started reading music, how to use your hand as a mnemonic device for remembering the notes on the treble clef, the bass clef, and the grand staff. Remember, you can practice like this with a partner or in small groups. And if you would like to go back to any other parts of the video, I highly encourage you to do so. We were going kind of quickly, so you may want to go back and practice some of the note naming sections again. If you'd like more ways to practice, you can check out the links and the resources in the details below. But before you do that, hit that like button and click subscribe to keep getting more music education videos. And if you know anyone who will find this lesson helpful, please share the link. You can also find more resources at themusicfox.com and facebook.com/themusicfox.